Imagine the following situation. Actually, this has already happened to some of you, so you don't even have to imagine. It's 2:30 in the morning, and you suddenly wake up. In the darkness of your otherwise comfortable room, you find yourself smothered by the occurrence of a phenomenon that's hard to describe. You're unable to move. You feel an overwhelming presence before you, lingering in your room, pouring from the closet, or creeping at the end of your bed. When you suddenly see it, a vaguely humanoid-shaped blacker than black, oily shadow is staring at you. And suddenly it's over. You get the sensation that something has been lost forever, taken from you. A sense of security, your skepticism, an amount of energy, a shard of your spirit. Have you ever wondered what lurks in the dark? That there are simply some things you cannot see, but behind the shroud of this reality, they can see you. Shadow people are one of the most commonly reported so-called paranormal phenomenon. They look like ethereal pitch-black, vaguely humanoid-shaped entities. They most often show up at night, while you are asleep. Their presence is accompanied by nightmares. And if you manage to wake up from them, you will find yourself unable to move, staring at these dark figures from the edge of your bed. Are these occurrences that of a sentient black mass, a creature without a body, a ghost unable to properly manifest, or simply a phenomenon of human imagination? Academics think it's the latter. They are, of course, wrong. They think that so-called sleep paralysis is caused because our body is not yet aware that it's awake, so we can't control our body, and these apparitions people see are just hallucinations. If that's the case, why can we move while we sleep? If that's the case, why do these events happen mostly between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning? If that's the case, why do people hallucinate the same figures? If that's the case, why do people around the planet claim to have seen shadow people while they were awake? One thing is clear. Enough reports of the shadow people can clearly verify that they have existed in human consciousness, storytelling, and art for centuries. These nocturnal visitors may have appeared once in your life, or they may have appeared many times. After all, according to estimates, sleep paralysis happens to around 10 to 50% of the population at least once in their lifetime, and multiple times to around 5% of the global population. For example, the writer and illustrator of this video has experienced such a thing. The following story happened to him in 2017, right after the night of his birthday. Quote, "The whole thing started with me having a strange dream at night. In my dream, I was walking through the streets on my way home. The streets were empty except for washed-out oily shadows. When I reached the entrance of the building, something took control of my legs and forced me to walk far away. I blacked out. I found myself on the streets again and headed home for the second time. This time, I managed to get inside the building. As I climbed up the stairs, it started to feel like my legs were made of concrete. They felt heavier and heavier with every step. Still, I managed to reach my apartment. I had this feeling that I had to get inside my room because someone or something is there and a dreadful thing is happening inside my room. As I reach for the door handle of the apartment, I can't touch it. I'm starting to feel something pulling me away from the door. I blacked out once again. I found myself on the streets once again. This time, however, it felt like deja vu, and I realized that this had happened before. I came to the conclusion that I'm dreaming. I had a strong feeling that someone is standing next to my bed while I'm sleeping. At first I thought that extraterrestrials were experimenting on me, probably because I was listening to a podcast about alien abductions the previous night. I had an idea that I will try to force myself awake. To my surprise, it actually worked. When I woke up, I'm laying on my back and can't move except for my eyes. I look to my right and I see this dark, oily figure. He was around 5 feet tall. His body vibrated like the vibrations of air rising from hot summer asphalt. He was a humanoid, featureless figure, and his edges appeared blurry. He also had a triangle-shaped spike on his head. I tried to get up to attack this intruder, but I couldn't move, so I started to force myself. I could feel my muscles starting to flex. All of a sudden, it felt like I was hit by electricity. It felt like I woke up. The shadow was nowhere to be seen, and I could move again. I did notice something strange. I was laying on my back, but back in those days I used to sleep on my stomach, and that's how I usually woke up. The next day I got home and I found an incense burner in my room. This was highly unusual. I asked my father what it was. He told me it's protection against the demons. Close quote. And that's the writer and illustrator's story. Based on what I could gather, there are multiple types of entities people describe encountering when waking up to a sleep paralysis event. The most common ones is the shadow person, a humanoid dark shape. But there's an entity named the hatman, who is said to be more powerful than the average shadow person. I have talked to this with a friend of mine who had a similar experience. While visiting Taiwan, he talked to a Taoist and Shinto priest about these creatures. A few days or maybe weeks later, the hatman visited him, which makes me think that by thinking, talking, or researching these entities, we can invite them to our life. He was kind enough to type out his story for me, which I'm going to share unedited. Quote, I'm sure I was screaming internally throughout the night. My throat was in horrible shape the next morning. It felt like I had choked on something or had a period of violent vomiting. Whether it was sleep paralysis or not, it was surely something that bordered on esoteric terror. The dream started simply enough. I was living in this hotel that had a major old turn-of-the-century vibe. It was estranged from modernity, but familiar, comfortable even. I could feel, at least in the logic of this dream, that this was like a home. There were a lot of glass cabinet displays with never-ending screens of reflections, sporadic images of a world outside the hotel, but no logical reasons as to how or why they were being reflected by the displays themselves. As I investigated the hotel, I eventually collapsed into the very position and fell asleep. I laid down flat with my face and turned to the left. There's a booth before me from which I'm unable to take my eyes away. Not only could I not take my eyes away from this setting, but I lacked the ability to close them as well. I could feel myself trying to kick my legs, but they were not moving. Inside the booth, an older man appeared in dapper 50s American-style clothing. He was smoking a cigar and wearing a hat. He wore a checkered tan suit with a bow tie with a vest beneath his jacket. He looked like something straight out of a 40s or 50s Hollywood movie. Even though I could see and recall these details, he was always slightly out of focus, smiling and taking long puffs from his cigar. It was like a shadow had overlaid my vision, and his movements had a subtle pulsing effect. It appeared jittery and shaky, like distorted video footage. I realized that this man is not a reflection like in every other surface, but he was there, tangible, sitting inside the booth, and he started to laugh, taunting and teleporting around the booth with different poses. To him, this was an amusing game. He said things like, "You know, this is a dream, but you also know it's much more." What does that mean? But it wasn't even the most sinister thing he said. His words shook my core. You're in touch with your dreams, but not where they actually come from. The entire time, there was this intense sensory overload. The entire hotel of glass displays had become a conduit of miserable sounds. Soft ticks and tacks on metal and glass, each one as overwhelming as standing next to heavy artillery fire. It lasted for what felt like 15 minutes straight. I could feel my chest and throat vibrate from the screaming, or at least the attempt to scream. My eyes would widen, but they would not close or look away. I was locked into this illusion. I could tell my eyes were open outside the dream. At this point, everything had merged into a single reality. Some terrible, vivid, lucid, wide-awake nightmare. The sun had slowly come up and my room was decently lit, but I was stuck in this position, not able to breathe, unable to move. I heard something moving in the other rooms. Every sound was another sensory overload that brought crushing, oppressive anxiety, as if I knew it was caused by some intangible intruder. Then there was this shadow thing. It was not laughing or saying anything, but I could tell it was amused by the circumstances it created for my torment. It moved things in front of my eyes and by my pillow, just to prove it could, that it had power and I did not. It placed a piece of wrapped candy, which I briefly saw in the dream, on my pillow, before my face on the pillow. Everything amplified like it was a terrible ASMR video. It felt like there was something scratching the inside of my skull. As quickly as it came, it was gone again. That was when another black mass appeared, with a smaller head. It laid opposite of me, and it took up most of my frame of view. I clenched my teeth as hard as I could. It was so close to me it completely distorted my vision. It was like having my finger too close between both of my eyes. A slight aura, a single image splitting into two. It had a guttural giggle that was unnaturally fast, sounding more like an item rumbling against the hardwood floor. I wake and can feel my brain awake as well, but my eyes were dry, as if they had been open the entire time. I moved my body again, but felt foreign, like playing with inverted stick controls in a game. I knew that I needed to rest because my body got no real sleep. Yet, every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the cigar man's home. I would immediately wake and then fall asleep, only to be stuck in this vicious circle. It was then I realized I'm still dreaming. Each time I was getting closer and closer to the booth, he was looking at me, laughing, enjoying how he has drawn me closer and closer. Finally, I woke up for real in the same position with my eyes wide open and without a blink. I was in complete disbelief. 2 or so hours have passed. I was in a zombie-like state for the first 3 hours that morning, viewing everything almost as if I had an out-of-body experience. It was as if my soul had been kicked out and had only now been able to retreat back into my body. Was it a dream, a nightmare, or sleep paralysis? I have no idea. But what makes it more eerie is that I do not know. I had a friend who recently went through something similar. She had a loop dream of waking up in the wrong place over and over again, with more dread each time. When you wake up from a bad dream, it's normal to have a heightened sensitivity to the surroundings. Before I was able to sleep again, the few noises that would happen naturally throughout my apartment would anxiously strike at my spirit until I was able to understand all of it. At some point, all my fear had disappeared, as if some physical presence was gone. Whoever he was, I hope the hat-wearing cigar man never bothers me again. He got what he wanted. I have no more energy to offer him." Close quote. And that's the end of his story. I found the description, never-ending reflections, interesting because I have heard that mirrors are a portal through which entities and energies can come into our world. I asked him about it, and he told me that there's a large mirror in the bathroom from where he had seen a shadow person emerge on an earlier occasion. He also said that when he woke up, he found a line of black hair next to his bed. His hair isn't black. My friend also mentioned that this happened at the night right after his birthday, just like it happened the night after the writer-illustrator's birthday. Is it coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. I'm curious if any of our viewers experienced something similar after their birthday. Both of these incidents happened between 2 and 3 in the morning. What could that mean? Well, that's the darkest part of the night. Maybe they're stronger at that point and that's why they strike that time. Or maybe it's simply when most people are sound asleep and thus the most vulnerable. So what could these creatures be? Well, the illustrator, thought he saw a ghost after seeing one of these creatures and he probably tried to feed on his energy. My friend reported that he was terribly exhausted in the morning. He slept a lot more that day, more than he usually does. In Buddhist theology, there are 6 realms of reincarnation. The realm of the gods, the realm of the humans, the realm of Asura, demigods, the realm of animals, hell, and finally the realm of the hungry ghosts. Maybe these nightly visitors used to be humans at one point. After all, why would they appear so human-like? Maybe they reincarnated as ghosts cursed to prey upon people and feed on their energy as a result of their decisions in a previous life. Maybe we can visit their realm in our dreams and they simply follow us back. Once the writer-illustrator talked to a girl who claimed that she could do astral projections. He couldn't tell whether she was telling the truth, but she said that while doing these projections she encountered a lot of shadow people in her city. She claimed to talk to these beings and most of them were indeed the ghosts of humans. They may get their darker-than-dark appearance because they suck up all the light around them to use it as energy to fuel themselves. It's probably the same reason why the so-called cold spot phenomenon exists in haunted places. In any case, if you ever had a shadow person encounter or ever experienced something paranormal, feel free to email us your experience. One thing is certain. There are more realities in this world, things beyond the 5 human senses.